Good morning, everybody. Welcome to everyone in Facebook. We're going Facebook Live this morning, and it's great to have everyone in the Zoom room for warm-ups at what feels like 5 in the morning. But it is 8 o'clock here on the West Coast and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. And in Europe, it's like dinner time, so it's all fine. Very excited to be here this morning with our very special guest, Gail Williams. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning. Hope you all are doing well.
Gail is coming to us from Chicago, from her studio at Northwestern, a very famous place, for sure. So good morning to everybody who hasn't been with us before, and for all of our people that are returning. Welcome to Monday morning warm-ups. It's great to have our fantastic warm-up community back again. So it's great to have Gail with us this morning, and we're going to be talking a little bit about breathing as a focus this morning. And Gail has very kindly offered to talk to us a little bit about Arnold Jacobs. So Gail, it's great to have you. What do you know?
Well, good morning, everybody. I think this is where I want to go with the Arnold Jacobs material. He, as everybody, as I'm sure Andrew and myself and many other teachers out there, all your students are basically different people. You have different syllabus for all your students because they're all different. And Jacobs did do the same thing. He worked with different ideas for different people. For me, because I'm not 6'2", and the first thing I did with him, he put me on his machines and tried to figure out how much air I had, and basically what he said was, well, that's what I have, so it doesn't make any difference how much air you have, is what you do with it. And that's the most important part of this studying with him, is what you do with it. And if you have tension, then you're going to kill some of your sound. If you don't take a full breath and get in the habit of taking a full breath, that's just another part of learning to create your sound. I remember him saying, up to your collarbones. Bring it all the way up to your collarbones. And I think that's just, I think we forget that. I think we have to make this really low, big belly sound, and your lungs don't go there unless there's a hole, and I don't think there's a hole there. So I've been doing this with students forever, but this was the week before spring break. So I went and had a student buy a hose at the local hardware, and he got 5-inch. He got a 1/2 inch hose. And I feel that's a little small. I usually use 5/8 or 3/4, but you don't need a toilet roll hole. That's too big, because you're not going to open your mouth that far when you're going to take a quick breath. But you can sort of replicate this if you just put your hand up to your mouth and do that. I have to shut my phone off. So this is a quick exercise. What I do is I put this hose in my hand like this. So it sort of makes a pretty good hand position, And you take 3 breaths. And then I'm going to play a middle C. But I'm going to take a breath 3 times, and on my third one, I'm going to continue taking that breath and then play with that air. And I want everybody to experience that openness. So I will do it with a hose. And see what kind of air you're using instead of what you normally use. And for me, that's a pretty good start of the day, to start with that kind of air and that kind of, the kind, I guess is what he used to say. It's the kind of air. So back to you, Andrew.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you, Gail. Terrific. All right. Well, why don't we take this a step further? So this absolutely, lines up exactly with what I'm trying to do in my sessions at the beginning of the day is build the mechanism from the base. So if you're not breathing well, then that's the foundation of what you're doing is going to be flawed. So let's apply this breathing feeling. So I think we've all got a really good idea of this breathing. I love the idea of breathing over your bottom lip. It's fantastic. And this nice, full feeling. And we're going to play two notes, starting on the same note. We'll start on a middle C, so concert F. Two notes without articulation, two notes with articulation. So we're just adding that articulation. But really, as Gail was saying, focus on that feeling of filling up the air, and then how you're going to release that. So we'll just do call and response. And then continuing down a half step. Great. So this is probably a good example. We played over the weekend. We played Shostakovich 10 at the laphil, which is a little bit of a smack in the face. If anyone who's played Shostakovich 10 would know. So my chops do not feel very responsive or good this morning. And this is actually a really good reminder for me that I need to focus on these elements that are going to help me produce quality sound. So I need to focus on my air. I need to focus on my breathing. What tends to happen for me is when I feel tight and tired and not great in my face, that's where my attention goes. And we try and make that feel good. But what I really want to do is set up the mechanism that is going to make me sound good when these eventually get warmed up. So I have a lot of rehearsals this week with chamber music stuff that we're doing at Colburn, and we're doing Dvorak 7. I want to set up this mechanism even though my conscious mind is saying, oh, we've got to make my chops feel good. So this is a really great reminder that Gail has given us that we need to focus on building from the ground up. Gail.
I'm going to put something in there. This is something that Jake would say all the time. Do not go on feel. Go on sound. So what, your chops don't feel good? I lived many years with my husband, who was a clarinetist, and he would say, oh, my reeds don't work today. Well, lucky him, he got the chance to change it, And I said, what am I going to do? Take a knife and cut off some of my lip? So it doesn't make any difference how it feels. It's what you're doing with it. And maybe you're going to have to use a little bit more flexibility, try to get it to work a little bit more. So you have to oil it up. And I think that's what you have to remember. You have to go on sound, not by feel. Not by feel. So another thing that he had me purchase was a small little hose. And it fits on the end of your mouthpiece. And you can have many different lengths. You can have really long lengths. You can have, 3/4 of an inch. whatever works, whatever your scissors cut off from this little tube. I'm not sure the size of this one. I usually have my students who bought this take it into the hardware store and see which one fits. But basically, it's a great tool if you're going to do some traveling, or if you're working on your low range and you can't really buzz in that low range as you would like. So this little tube is not very expensive, maybe 25 cents. So you can replicate a good easy buzz. I used to use the old burp that would go on the end of the horn, the metal one, and one day I forgot I had it in and I almost took out my front teeth. So I just don't use that, but I do use this, and I have an old mouthpiece and a metal buzz pipe that's probably 4 inches long maybe, and a hole that's drilled in about a half an inch past where your mouthpiece goes in. Then you can play high. If you don't have that hole, you get to a place where you kind of warble a little bit. So that's a great tool if you're going skiing or you're going hiking or something, taking something like this, that you can do that. And I got that idea from one of the first horn workshops that I went to, and Wendell Haas played the Bach cello suites there. I think he was 88. I'm not sure. It was 1970. And he said, we asked him about buzzing and stuff, and first of all, he said, well, I don't take my mouthpiece on a hike. I'm afraid I'll lose it, you know. So he would free buzz. But there are people that, I mean, Mr. Jacobs would be rolling over in his grave right now if I talked about free buzz, because he was so against it, because it was too much tension. And most people know that I grew up on a farm. You know.
Can you give us an exercise that you would do with your
Sure.
Your part?
I usually go to the piano. I'm going to unplug my computer and go to the piano, and I'll show you what to do with this, because I think it's in the Brophy book. Then, of course, you can go high. But I feel like this is a real basic part of our repertoire and our warm-up and our basics that we sometimes forget about, buzzing into that range to make it stronger. And a little hose will make it easier because you have some resistance and some length.
Awesome. Gail, early in your warm-up session, so you do breathing, buzzing. What's the next step onto the horn as you sort of progress?
The next step that I always did, buzzing, and then I've changed it from what I used to do to what I do now, I do much more chromatics with Sam Falafian. He got me onto the chromatics in his book. Bill Adams routine, Clark. So I feel like you can make this middle low register even. So I sort of start starting on a low concert G flat or R D flat. Then you can put some variety into it. So flutter, slur, tongue. And sometimes I'll go up 2 octaves. So I feel like that's almost getting a little bit of a long tone-ish on your face because you're constantly playing for about 5 or 6 minutes.
Awesome. Let's keep going.
Want to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to concert C. And I also almost always do this on the F horn. And then when I feel I'm a little more warmed up, sometimes I do it this way. Starting on our concert F middle C. So out the fifths and then out to the octaves and back. And that's a Bill Adams routine. And there's a question in here about fluttering. I have had some students learn how to flutter. But I don't, if you can't flutter, I don't recommend you growling because I don't think it's the same purpose. Fluttering gets your air forward and growling does not. So I think it's better to just go ahead and slur and then try to articulate on that airstream and not try to stop the air when you're tonguing.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's interesting because yeah, we actually had I forget who it was. Dana may be able to remember this. We had someone in the Invested Musician program who, over the course of the course, learned how to flutter tongue. They couldn't at the beginning and learned how to do it. But basically, it's a bit of a genetic thing. So if you can't flutter tongue, good luck trying to find out how to do that, because it's actually working against your genetics. But for horn players, one of the things that I find actually gives a similar feeling. I don't know if you've experienced this, Gail, but if you play stopped, it's a similar sensation as for the flutter tongue, because it really requires us to engage with the airstream and to keep everything nice and forward. So even in the low register, it's really good to to practice stopped, because it helps that stability and strength. All right. So Gail and I are both very happy teachers this week. There was an audition for the Dallas Opera, and there were two positions, and one of the Colburn students and one of the former Northwestern students were successful in that audition. So we're both thrilled for their success. The amount of work, obviously, that goes into winning auditions is enormous for the students, and yeah, so congratulations to those two guys, Shelby Nugent and Jackson Brasifka. Very excited for both of them. It's really cool.
Auditions, they're not a normal day. They're just not a normal day. And the more you can practice it, and I think that I'm a really big fan of Don Green and his preparation and his centering, and I think in everyday life that is a really important part that I don't think it takes very long to get focused and to learn how to do it in your practice so you can apply it in your auditions and your performances. I don't think just doing it in a performance or an audition is where you want to start. I think you need to practice it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that we include in our programs at Invested Musician. We have our summer program coming up starting in June, and one of the big components of that is mental preparation, mental training, and the mental side of performing. And we work with Dinka Vlakovic. So Radovan's wife is a fantastic. Well, she was originally a sports psychologist, but does sports psychology, music psychology, psychotherapy. And exactly what Gail's point is, it's the same. The mental side is a skill that we all need to develop, and so we need to make sure that we apply it in everything that we do, and practice it. If we don't practice it, it's not gonna be with you when you're in performance. So the centering skills, the mindfulness, the mental rehearsal, all these mental skills are things that we need to practice on a daily basis, exactly the same as you would practice your breathing, your buzzing, scales, all those sorts of things. And speaking of scales, let's do some repeated note scales. This is one that everyone who has been with us pretty regularly will be familiar with. Repeated note scales. Dana's going to put where that is in the packet in the chat, but we'll just call and response. We'll start on a middle C, or concert F. And one of the things that I picked up from Gail, actually, I steal this idea, is I really like the idea of doing these ones in expanding steps. So one of the things I learned from over the last couple of years or several years listening to Gail talk about these things. So starting on middle C, going down to B, up to C sharp, down to B flat, up to D, so that you're getting this expansion of the scales, and maybe this leads into another drill of yours, Gail. I'm not sure. Or you're muted. Gail, you're muted. Sorry.
A question in the chat about doing the Bill Adams routine. I pick and choose. I'm like doing Schlossberg. You know, I have many exercises of the same type, and I'll choose different ones to cover different things depending what I'm working on. But one that of the we haven't done really much of any kind of flexibilities yet, and I like a lot of flexibilities. I do a lot of Teuber, but this is one from a trumpet book because I like to steal from everybody, including Andrew. I like to do, it's on the Summer Fun page, number 4. This is from Bailin. And I try to do it all on natural horn. So starting on middle C. And I'm going to try to make it really kind of gooey. Now, I'm more worried about my air. I'm not going to slot all the notes. I just want to blow down as I'm going through it. And you can certainly do it on your mouthpiece first and then going on the horn. That sometimes works even better.
Yeah, we're just going to get Dana to put that in the chat so that everyone will have that. So just give us a second. Maybe if you could demonstrate it again.
Yeah. So if I'm going to do it on the mouthpiece, and you saw me with my hand out here, that's something Jacobs did all the time. He would put his hand in front of my mouthpiece to see what kind of air I was using. Well, nowadays with COVID and everything else, you don't do that. But it's a good chance to see, what am I doing with my air? Am I backing away? Am I blowing through? As you go higher, does it get thinner? You can really test what your air is doing. So if I was to do it on my mouthpiece, so I want to hear that real flip about the octave. And transfer that to the horn. And that's, you just really feel how your air is just really flying.
Okay, we may not have this with us, but we can give it a go anyway. So F horn, let's give it a ride.
Up to G horn. E flat horn. A flat horn.
Just to jump in. So Jill, thank you for putting that in the chat. there's a book there that we had from, I think, the last warm up sessions that we did. So that link is in the chat if you want to open that. It's on page 24. This exercise. Sorry, can you do that one again, Gail?
Yeah, in an A flat horn. D horn. And then A horn. And you can take this all the way down or all the way up. So if you're working on low range, it works perfect.
Yeah, fantastic. Really, I mean, it's again in the warm up. What's really important, obviously, is that once you're setting up the mechanism, we're then making sure that we're touching all these different areas. And I love the idea that Gail has of stealing from everybody. It's always a good philosophy, I think. As long as you occasionally give credit.
Well, the stealing came from a book that I read, actually, the Little Book of Talent by Daniel Coyle. Have you read that?
Yeah.
And he says Picasso would say, "You don't borrow, you steal." So
there you go.
There you go.
Cool. Okay. Speaking of stealing and giving credit, why don't we continue with a little bit of flexibility? So these are Alan Mann flexibilities. So Alan Mann was Australia's probably most famous horn teacher. He was first horn in the Sydney Symphony for quite a long time, and Barry Tuckwell's teacher. And he was also my teacher's teacher back in the day. So yeah, Alan Mann. Very, very, very well-known name in Australia. So Alan Mann flexibilities. Dana's going to put in the chat what page that is on. I think there we go, page 16. Thank you very much. Here we go. Terrific. And there are a bunch of other Alan Mann flexibilities, obviously in the packet for you to work on. I don't do all of them, to be honest, every day, because I don't have like 6 hours to warm up. So picking different ones each day, and change the rhythms, change the articulation, change the speed that you're doing them at, change the dynamics. Not always the same dynamic is important. So, all right, back to you, Gail.
One of the exercises I think that is terribly important is articulation. And Andrew started doing some of the articulations with the scales, which I just love. But that is part of music. And I think if you look at the first page of the pre-warm-up in the Farkas book, you'll find it. It's just arpeggios. And I've kind of expanded it because I always feel like I need to try new things. So if I miss a note, I'm not concerned about if I miss a note, but I'm more concerned about what kind of air was behind that note. And I try to stay on the F horn. I start on R, G, but using natural horn crooks. So this is my C crook. And just go ahead and blow. Just get it moving. Get your air moving. It's not with so much hard tongue. He always talked about small case T, large U. A large U is more important than the T. The T is not going to do anything but clarity, and the vowel is going to get the sound to the back of the hall. So 1 and 3, F horn. And if you listen carefully, I didn't articulate as clean. So if I did that, I would probably either go to the mouthpiece or I use my best teacher, upside down. You cannot play high on this inspirometer. It's a little different than what you have, Andrew, I think. But it's insensitive spirometer, it's called. And I would buzz. And I want to see that ball moving. I don't want to see down to the bottom. That's too much tongue and tension. So he had me buy these. I buy them all the time. When the hose gets kind of black, I decide maybe it's time to get a new one, you know. But it's really a great teacher if you're doing any kind of scale work or slurs. Oops, maybe I'm not using the right kind of air. So the ball just flies to the top. It's hard to see, I know, on the computer. But you can also do it with a little piece of paper in front of your mouthpiece. That if the paper's not constantly moving, then you know you're not using the right kind of air and you're probably tonguing too hard.
Very cool. Right. Yeah, I would. We've mentioned this before in the warm-ups. There's some fantastic videos on air and air speed and use of air. A lot of stuff, obviously, on YouTube and throughout cyberspace. But James Morrison, who is I don't know if you're familiar with James Morrison, Gail. But James Morrison is an Australian trumpet player. He also plays trombone and saxophone and piano and double bass and drums and everything. And he's got a series of videos on YouTube that I always encourage people to check out, thinking about airspeed in relation to moving through the range and just ease of production. So and some really good ideas on breathing, on taking fast breaths. So
well, I think that's a very important. I do want to bring this up. I think that we need to know our harmonics or our which partial you're playing on. Then you can use your math. Oh, what's 2 plus 2? Oh, it's 4. So if you go from your second one, that's how much you can use your airspeed to move forward. 4 to 8, etc., etc. So relating it to number system, which is something that Jacob's talked a lot about because of the tablato, system he used. I think it's very important that you think about the airspeed. I totally agree, Andrew. Airspeed is where it is.
Yeah, it's. I think for people who are playing, any instrument where we have to play high for an extended period of time, if you're going to rely on the little muscles in your face to get you through things and get you into the upper register, it's going to be a short-lived success. And by short-lived, a matter of seconds. When you're playing, Mahler symphonies, Bruckner, Shostakovich, things that are staying high and need this power and strength and also control up in that register, the air is, certainly going to be the way to go. All right, Gail, what else have you got for us? Give us another one.
I guess I have to use a Norman Schweikart, He would play so start on middle C and do 4 times up and down, because how many excerpts do you have those notes? And then you can add articulation if you want. But right now, let's just go back and forth. We're going to go to D flat. B. And then the trick is to do it backwards. Start down there. Because that's easy to start up and then go down. Etc. But Schweikart would do one that I can't do anymore in one breath. But he would go. And all the way to the bottom of the horn. And I have to stop and take a couple breaths now. But that's a great exercise if you're working on flexibility or second horn material in Beethoven symphonies, etc., etc.
Yeah, and the good thing about that drill is you are guaranteed to go either side of your break at some point.
And stop and take a breath.
Yeah, it's super important to, again, when I find when going over the break and oscillating either side of the break, the airstream is the thing that is going to get you to move either side, and just keeping everything nice and stable in your setup. Um, but it's certainly an area that, because it's not very comfortable, because it generally doesn't sound great immediately, we tend to avoid it. We tend to avoid this in our practice. So really make sure that, if you recognize that you have a break in a certain register, that's totally fine. It's just that you need to work a little harder to make that transition smooth. Gail has a break in a totally different place than mine, um, and mine is about an octave lower than yours. I think mine is on the pedal C. I think Gail, yours is around the middle C. It doesn't matter where your break is or where you have these areas. It's just an indicator that you need to spend a little bit more time in that area to be able to get around.
Yeah, I always feel like that's you have to go there first, and that's when Elise did that stretcher last week. It's sort of what I have to do every day. I start there. I go. And just kind of murmur in that area, and then I'll take it. And it's written out. You can see it in the stretcher, but it's also, if you get the Dufresne book, that Tom Bacon put out. I'm very proud to say he was one of the first teachers here at Northwestern, and he was Farkas's teacher and Brock's teacher, and it's got all his warm-ups, and they're all the same. We're both, we're kind of all doing the same thing, just a little different order of the notes. Yeah. And he has it going back and forth, so you can see all the way from that note all the way up to high C, and it's written out in front of you. It's nice to have that.
Yeah, great. All right. So speaking of registers that are not comfortable, we're going to do a little one that we touched on last week, but I want to just go through the whole a whole drill of that. So we're going to play starting on G, low G below middle C for horn. So this is a C, middle C. We're going to play it open, and then with the fingering a half step higher, but we have to bend the note down. Again, this is one that this is not going to sound 100% great. You might sort of struggle when you're bending these notes, but you're going to feel the stability of your setup and feel the engagement with your airstream as we go down. So let's give this a go. And then we go down a half step. So I can already feel, after doing one of the bending ones, the next open note is already like a good 20% fuller. It's amazing how much the return on investment is with this drill. So now down to an F sharp, concert B. So again with this one, and the same, if you're going to do this exercise stopped, don't do it for long periods of time, because it's not going to be that healthy for you, and you're going to get bored pretty quickly, and you're going to get frustrated. So do it for like a minute, maximum of 2 minutes, and then move on to something else. but it's really, really great for developing this this strength in this low register and stability. And for me, if I don't do this exercise multiple times a day, that register just evaporates, and it becomes, I can play soft in that range and sort of do, sort of get around it a little bit, but that's about it. I have no volume. I have very little control down there. Yeah, which is not handy because despite the fact that I play most of my job is as a high horn, it's incredible how often we have to go down to that register. And definitely for auditions, if you don't have that bottom octave stable, there's it makes life very challenging. Gail, I think
Andrew, I have a question for you. Do you normally stay on the F horn, or do you go back to the B flat horn?
I for that one I like playing on the F horn
Okay.
because it's just harder.
Yeah, I actually used it a lot last week with students here, and it was very interesting.
On a 103, the note bending exercise on a 103, it's really, really difficult to do that one on the B flat horn with the note bending. For some reason, on a 103, it doesn't tend to work. So F horn, but I really like the idea, and Gail touched on this as well. A lot of F horn early in the warm up is really great because it's more difficult, but you need to blow more air. You need to move the air in a really open, relaxed way. Otherwise, it's just not going to work on the F horn. So. Yeah, not worrying so much about accuracy, but the sort of air that is behind the sound is to steal one of Gail's phrases. All right, Gail, I think we've got time for one more before you get to be our special guest, Elephant Star.
Ah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. After the meeting, could I just please talk to you a little bit? I auditioned for Northwestern. I would like to ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Something that I think is important is we haven't really gone to the high range, and people that play low need to go in the high range just as much as first round players need to go in the low range. But doing it with an ease, not this, crunching, pinching. No, that's something that I think that is developing a bad habit. So only in good habits do you do this. So this would, I use this as a David Crable kind of wiggly one. And it's just got to be this. And it's got the articulation is just riding on top of the air. It's not stopping the air all the time. It's just blowing. So
Right.
starting on A flat on the F horn.
Can you give us another demo?
So if you get up to there and it kind of squeezes down, what do? You go here. Go on your mouthpiece so you see what you're doing. So you can be your own teacher and you go, oh, maybe that's something wrong, So always check yourself with your air because the air is the most important.
Terrific.
Then after you go onto the B flat horn, you go back to the A flat on the F horn and you add and you just you fly up to the top octave with ease, but not with tension.
Right. Gail, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We have more videos with Gail on our YouTube channel from previous warm-up sessions. So Invested Musician at YouTube. And also, if you want to learn more about what we do at Invested Musician, we have a summer program that we're going to be opening up starting in June, working on all of these aspects of the playing side, the physical side of playing, the musical side, organization of your time, how to practice, what's the best way to to get the most out of your practice time, mental training. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we include, a lot of audition preparation materials, and we bring in a whole bunch of experts. And there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of playing for the group, and we have a fantastic community. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please check out investedmusician.com. And thank you for everybody for coming this morning. It's been great to see you all. And without any further ado, Gail Williams is going to be the best impersonation of an elephant that we can muster at 8 in the morning.
Well, the pressure's on, But I'm gonna try to do my elephant exercise, right, which is a little longer than one that I heard last week. But this is one that probably in the 20 years I was in the Chicago Symphony, I used just before I walked upstairs. I say, okay, I'm ready. And I'd walk upstairs. So.
Can you give us that one again?
I think I did send it to you, or it's in a warm-up packet. So you have to add your lip trill, because if you haven't had time to do lip trills, you get that done too. And now you're ready to play Heldenleben. There you go.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gail. That was a really amazing hour.
Well,
thank you so
thank
for your
you.
amazing
You,
information, knowledge. It's always great to hear from you and hear you play. Of course, it's a treat for us all to hear you play every time. So
thank you
so much. Yeah, great. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everybody in Facebook. This session will be up in Facebook in the Invested Musician site for a little while, and everything will be sent to people who sign up for these emails as well. So look forward to seeing you next week. Next week we have a special international guest, so I can't tell you who it is yet, but we're working on it, and that will be announced early in the week, hopefully, once it gets confirmed. But exciting. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome. Have a great week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.